Welcome, everyone, to the Stories of Peace event. To start off 2021, the Y&Y community was really focused on the 5 Ps of sustainable development, and we decided to start with the peace pillar of sustainable development. And before we get started, I would love to see everyone sharing on the chat, what does peace mean to you? So as you join the event today, what are some of the things that come to mind when you think about peace? What are some of the words that you can relate to peace? What comes to mind when you think of what peace means? Feel free to type in the chat so we can share some answers about it. Everyone sharing on the chat. Great. As we come in and we start sharing, I would love to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, I would love to share some of our motivation to host this event. For us at Y&Y, creating peace reaches way, way beyond stopping violence and conflict alone. Peace is essential to sustainable development, and by working towards achieving all of the sustainable development goals, we are also working towards a more just, equitable, and peaceful world for all living beings.
Today, we'll hear diverse stories and experiences of social entrepreneurs whose work contributes to building peace in their communities. We hope you feel inspired and moved by our speakers' stories and begin to even recognize yourself as a peacemaker too. It takes bravery and courage to share your story. So after each storyteller has spoken, I would love to encourage you all watching to share any reflections, insights, or words of encouragement that come to mind when you've heard these speakers share their stories. So you can share those comments in the chat. We really want to engage in this conversation as a community. And without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Avina Ajit, to share her story. She's the co-founder of the Refugee Integration Organization, which aims to design economic solutions for the integration of refugees in Ghana. Welcome, Avina.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Avina Ajit. I'm from the south of India, though my organization is in Ghana. So I've always been very concerned with the issues that people face in the world, but especially the people who are forced out of their homes and who lose their identity. Yes, refugees. So having studied social development journalism in college with a focus in refugee discourse or the refugee narrative, I just knew I had to do something as soon as I could. So I saved up some money. I gathered my things and I gathered a lot of courage. And I flew to Ghana in the hopes of finding something to do. I'd read things about the refugee camps there. I was fortunate enough, and magically everything just fell in place. I was fortunate enough to meet somebody working with refugees at the Krisan camp, and he's now my best friend and my co-founder at Rio. And so we started the organization together. One of our first steps in the organization was making the journey to the camps together. And as you can imagine, a refugee camp would be, it was quite isolated from cities. But as soon as we got there, it was just peace. The air was moist because it was by the beach, and there was a green backdrop and thatched huts. The place didn't seem very rich, but after speaking to 2 people or 3 people or 4 people, it didn't matter, but it was so rich in stories. Um, not all good stories though. One gentleman, our main point of contact at the camp, one gentleman, he walked us through the camp while telling us about his story of having escaped Sierra Leone during the Blood Diamond phase. And he one day came back home from school to see the army, or what was supposed to be the army, at his house. And in front of him and his siblings, they decapitated his dad. And following that, more horrifyingly, he's witnessed his mother and sister get raped by these very same men. And just like this, there are more horror stories from this camp. There are women who've walked through through the Saharan desert to just try to find some place safe. And there are kids, very ironically, but a kind of painful irony. They're very Many of them are obsessed with fantastical ideas of making money, like joining the Illuminati. And so Rio's really been influenced by these stories. We've had a really long journey, but our lesson at the end of the day has always been to really understand what these people need, what our beneficiaries need, what the people that we're serving need, and more than just what we hear or what we study or even sometimes read. We have to understand from them. So one of the mistakes Rio actually made was, way earlier we started a language program, and one day at the camp somebody came knocking at the door early in the morning, and Ria opened his door to find out just somebody saying that we don't need to learn a new language, we need money. And this started our microfinance program, which is greatly inspired by the Grameen model. After Ria, my co-founder, had a conversation with him at a conference. So, as we do, we provide small amounts of money for women at the camps to start small businesses. They could start cooking food, or they could start a hair salon service. And we thought we still believe this is really going to empower the community. But what we really need right now, or is that we need to understand the community more. I'm happy to be sharing with you today that as of today, actually, we've finally received our funding for the first phase of our research project at Creasun. And we really need to understand the diversity of this community, considering they're vulnerable. And as I would suggest to all of us working here, that we need to understand from their perspective, or the people's perspective of the problem. Um, and also so we can design our solutions in such a way. But I'd like to conclude by saying that in our journey, we've understood that each problem has a countless number of causes, but we also have countless number of solutions. So I'd like to wish everyone best of luck on our journey to making the world more peaceful for everyone to live in. Thank you for having me speak here today as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Avina, and congratulations for your initiative. Congratulations for the grant that you guys got.
Thank
That's
you.
big news. Congratulations for that. And I love how you shared about being really attentive to the local needs. And as a social entrepreneur, have that open heart, that open mind to adjust to whatever the local needs are, whatever the local demands are. I think that's really a heart of a social entrepreneur and a peacemaker. So thank you so much for sharing that, and also for, like you said in the beginning, packing up the resources you had at the moment, whatever they were, and your courage to go to the field and actually make the change that you wanted to see there. So that's a wonderful story. Thank you so much. Big round of virtual claps for you. And without further ado, I would love to call up our next speaker. Our next storyteller is Carolina Rosales, a public health physician by training and a specialist in humanitarian medical assistance. She is the founder of Gimedic Humanitarian Medical Association, which focuses on the promotion of health as a human right. Welcome, Carolina. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here and to let me show and share a little bit about the things that we are doing. As everybody here, I'm Dr. Carolina Suheil. I'm a medical physician. I'm a DC of Y&Y. As a physician, every day we live between life and death. As a physician, you put all your medical knowledge trying to save the people who trust you. But what happens when all your efforts are frustrated because there are no medicines, no medical supplies, and no hospital medical infrastructure? Maria was one of my first patients. As a woman from my indigenous community who didn't speak Spanish, she walked more than 20 hours to get to the nearest clinic. She was carrying her baby in her arms. The baby was so sick, has a severe infection. But when Maria arrived with the hope that I could help her, her baby was dead. And this is the reality of 55 million people who live in extreme poverty in Mexico. They don't have money to buy medicine or to pay a doctor or to go to the city, and continues to be a reality around the world where millions of people continue to die every day because there are no doctors, no medicine, and no infrastructure. Right now, we have a pandemic situation, and people living in extreme poverty continue to be forgotten. As always, they are the last on the scale of healthcare. And I would like to ask, what would you do if somebody in your family has a severe COVID and there is no space in a hospital? Or what would you do if there is no oxygen and your mother is slowly suffocating to death? That is happening here and there where you live. And through Guy Medic, we are treating patients even on the street because for them are not available spaces at the hospital. The good thing about everything that we are doing through Guy Medic is that we are fighting the structural violence, a violence that is invisible to many, even knowing it's a human right. We see this structural violence on a daily basis. It represents the lack of equal access to services. Could be health, could be education, could be another things. And although we don't see it, through this initiative, I'm contributing to create a positive peace. And I'm saying this because believe me, that I remember each name of each patient that I lost to such simple diseases that could have been cured by modern medicine. And for that, that's why this has become my mission life, to be a doctor for the poor. There are so many people that I can help. Most of the places that we are working right now has drug conflict zones, and preventive medicine is the only way to save lives and to contribute to peace building. In addition, as a humanitarian medical association, workers who adopt the humanitarian role, typified by values like neutrality and impartiality, it's illustrated best by Guy Medic, have been particularly liable to victimization. We really love what we are doing here in Mexico. So I travel to remote villages all over my country, and since my own experience, people who are marginalized, both because of economy or geography, they are the ones who suffer a lot. The longest that I have trouble is walking for at least 7 days with medical equipment. I have this kind of mobile medical clinics where I have seen hundreds of patients, and everybody thought that I'm crazy. Even at these days, most of my friends think the same. But I just want to create a health system for these people. And I work very, very hard to bring medical doctors and medical students to that places. And with that, to contribute to create a positive peace, talking about structural violence. And I have seen thousands of patients, but each patient's story touches my heart, and believe that I can do, and I believe that I can do this all over the world. And I want to spend the rest of my life helping to recover the health of each patient that I have, no matter where they are. Because just through this, I believe that we can demonstrate peace is possible. And this is why this medical initiative is so beautiful and so powerful. And it's a good way to teach our elders that positive things can be done, having attitude and the imperative capacity to move forward, building forms of peace, trying to allow without forget the needy. In my case, my patients are my life and my soul, and I'm not going to give up. And I know that through Gaimedi we can contribute to create a positive peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolina, for sharing your story, your incredibly powerful work, and your resilience. One thing that I heard echoed in your story multiple times was the system of structural violence. And creating peace, we can't address we can't create positive peace without addressing people's basic human needs, and your work is highlighted and very exemplary of that. So thank you for all the hard work that you do.
You're
I
welcome.
want to introduce our next speaker, Diego Padilla. He is the co-founder and CEO at Centro Urbes, an organization that works for every wildlife urban ecosystem so that it can be preserved and managed adequately with community participation and based on scientific evidence. Diego sent us a video as he's not able to be with us live today. So let's go ahead and watch what he shared.
Hi everyone, I'm Diego Padilla from Lima, Peru, and I am part of the organization Centro Urbes. We work in Lima for the conservation of wildlife ecosystems nearby the city. And I'm really glad that Eunice and Judith actually trying to connect the dots between different themes such as diversity and peace as well. From my point of view and my personal experience, I believe that peace and diversity are strongly connected. In my city, in Lima, a lot of people believe that we are a gray city, but most of them are unaware of the different colors that we have around us. It's not the colors that belong to nature, but also to the diversity that we have across our cultures. At the same time that I studied biology, I came to understand what is the importance and relevance of obviously biodiversity in terms of ecosystem conservation and in general sustainable development. But also I started to understand what is the importance of, for example, sexual diversity or gender diversity in general. As a gay activist, I have come to witness different situations where our identities have been considered wrong or insufficient or something like we are not enough or we are not worth doing or um, becoming part of something greater. So I found myself at several times struggling with discrimination and also with lack of opportunities as a scientist, as a young scientist. So, what does all of this need to, or how is this connected to peace? Well, just like a lot of different people have said before us, peace is not exactly the absence of war, but mostly is connected to the absence of, for me, for example, uh, people trying to make a better environment and city one single step at a time, one single step per day. And I believe that peace is strongly connected to diversity in terms of we cannot be talking about peaceful environments or peaceful livelihoods or whatever you want to like frame the peace in a territorial approach. But um, unless we have every single people happy and that they feel that they belong to whatever they want to belong and at the same time also how to design and create environments for every single species that we share the land where we live on. So diversity is a enabling condition for peaceful environments. That's from my point of view. I'm aware that we may have different views, insights about what a peaceful environment might mean, but it's important that at this time, in these days, in this pandemic time, it's important that we listen to the most underprivileged voices, people that usually do not have the opportunity to share their thoughts. And it's important not only to listen to them, but also start making decisions with them and for them. So diversity is a key thing for achieving that. So that's from myself. That's my point of view. I'm really sorry of not being with you live, but I had some trouble with the time zone, and well, you know. But nevertheless, I'm really interested into hearing what you think about this opinion that I'm putting on the table. So let's start sharing more ideas and let me know what you think about what I have just said. A lot of hacks, and please take care wherever you are in the world. Bye.
How beautiful is that? Beautiful, Diego. Thank you so much for your contribution. I think what really struck to me is what you said about peace making the world colorful. And I think that's beautiful, you know, both in a physical way, because peace implies having a safe environment, conserved biodiversity, conserved natural environment, and that makes the world literally more colorful, but also in terms of society, you know, peace entails embracing diversity in all of our different colors and shapes and forms. So I absolutely love that, Diego. And thank you so much for the beautiful work you do as an activist in Peru and, of course, in the whole world. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. After this beautiful story, we have more. This is already amazing, and I feel very inspired from all the stories we've heard so far. But we still have some more storytellers to share their stories with us. So I now like to invite Kiko Muo. He's the co-founder of Angaza Edimo, which is an edtech social enterprise primed to transform education across Kenya and the entire African continent by delivering personalized learning experiences to students and addressing the problem of inefficient classrooms and inadequate educational materials. Welcome, Kiko. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much, Jess, for the introduction. And I'm really excited to be here and really honored to be in the midst of really great social entrepreneurs pushing peace building in different corners of the world. So for me, peace, it's a very simple definition of people staying together or having a very specific cohesion in the environment that they are staying. This could be either in their workplaces or what they're growing into. But the work that we do in Kenya, and which I strongly believe education should be more of a basic need. I'm happy to hear that one of our colleagues mentioned the basic needs really leading to what peace should be. And that's really what I also think, that if we're going to have a different divide of people having resources of education and others people not having a different resource of education, then definitely we're creating that big pyramid of for those who have and for those not to have. I mean, it goes without mentioning that if you're not educated, then you end up either being into the informal sector or end up not being employed, and rather not being able to afford a good basic living that you can't be able to pay for your resources that you need to survive. And so what does this result to? If I don't have money, if I don't have a job that I can have, then that means either I end up into violence. And basically maybe, for example, in Kenya, where we have some of crimes really rising because of the huge factor of the youth, who we've really primed to see that we can really work with them and provide them with the resources. Because if these youth don't have anything to do, they're either idle, so what do they end up into? So they end up in committing crime so that they can get bread into their table. So part of the work that we do is to ensure that for every kid that is born in Kenya, and also when you expand into the whole of Africa, is that they can have a decent education. And what this results into, the last impact, is them being able to either do two things: get into the workforce or become entrepreneurs who can lead to economic development, not just in Kenya, but across the whole continent, and at the end of the day, the world. So what our company typically does is we have a specific program which we believe have actual impact on what we call in the youth or out of school youth. And this is where we're aiming to equip them with the real skills for the workforce. And these are youth who are above 18 who have either finished basic education and have not proceeded to tertiary education, or even they finished tertiary education, but they're not even anywhere to be placed because they were not really prepared for the workforce. So what our program or our commitment looks is like what the current workforce needs is, and can we get to really put these youths into a training that's quite hands-on and very technical. This training doesn't have to be what it's very general in the classroom, but this is what it looks in. This is what specific job, like in technology, or specific job in the informal sector requires. So are we able to provide them with this skill? And then we take them into more of like different pillars of getting these skills, from them getting them excited about these skills, training them, and then placing them into a ready to work program, so that once they graduate from this ready to work program, they can either pursue the two paths as I mentioned earlier. They can get placed into different jobs, or they can lead the path of innovation for them to build really great resources that they could be monetized and developed into entrepreneurship. That will result that if you get a job, then you have money. If you're an entrepreneur, if the business goes well, then definitely you have some returns into that. So our work has really been quite successful. I mean, from this program, we managed to do about 14,000 students and youth last year. This year, we go in full force to really drive this training, especially for the out of school youth. And we diversifying the ecosystem, because again, we can't do it all by ourselves. So we're looking into different people or different partners. This could be community-based organizations to offer the youth so that they can come into the trainings, different sectors like the government, partners like corporates to offer more resources for these youth. So just in a nutshell, it's what I believe, if we can have everyone with a skill that they are proud of, with a skill that you can work anywhere, and you could use that skill as a value for you to gain something in your world of living, that we create an equitable world where everyone is okay with what they have, where everyone is able to use that skill and convert that skill into a monetary value for them to actually buy the basic commodity, which is shelter, food, which are all needs to be monetized. So if everyone is able to have that, and everyone is okay with what they're living and able to put food every day, then people will not be forced into doing crime so that they can get to feed themselves or feed their the generations coming on board. So it's for us that even beyond what we call in to do is looking to asking different people to join into this so that they can see that really education is a key pillar in ensuring that an equitable world is achieved and a peaceful world is achieved. So thank you so much for hosting me. And I'm really excited seeing, again, people really doing amazing jobs in driving peace in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kiko, for sharing your story and your incredible work as well. I'm so impressed by what you're doing. And also, I noticed that you have a two-tiered approach to peace building. You're intervening in the cycle of violence that exists by providing education and resources for youth to then contribute to positive peace. So these youth that you're empowering are also contributors to positive peace and more peaceful societies. So thank you for sharing that with us. So our next speaker is Madhav Dutt of Green the Gene, which pioneers extremely low-cost technology and data-driven solutions to help local communities in acute and immediate environmental crises around the world. It is a vision for a world where no human lacks access to safe water, faces food insecurity, or is forced to live in survival mode. Green the Gene is completely youth-led. And I'm so excited to hear Madhav speak, so welcome.
Thank you so much, Kasia, for that introduction. And I mean, thank you, everybody. It's been really inspiring to hear your really powerful stories and all the amazing work that everybody's doing here. I come from a slightly different perspective on peace, both in terms of positive peace building as well as in terms of actively post-conflict peace building as well. And I think when we typically think of climate change, that doesn't really sort of jump out as something that should be looked at in such scenarios, but it is actually quite critical. And while climate change is rarely the primary cause of conflict, it can act as a risk multiplier. It can deepen and worsen underlying vulnerabilities. It compounds a lot of these existing problems and sources of friction and conflict. So, building sustainability plays a very key role in the resilience of communities, particularly in post conflict scenarios where peace building efforts are sort of in very critical positions. Uh, and so, this is why at Green the Gene, we very heavily focus on helping people get access to safe water uh, through technology, helping people build or co-create solutions towards food security, as well as helping them get access to shelter. And these are very essential basic human needs, which sort of help build healthy, prosperous, and peaceful communities. So we do this. We started back in 2004 as a really, really small environmental club in school. Over the years, we've grown quite a bit. We work in 62 countries with about 7,000 young volunteers in an entirely sort of youth-led manner. And so the principle that we sort of really leverage is that the investing in building solutions that help people in these immediate crisis situations affecting communities along dimensions of these fundamental needs, along these sort of acute environmental crisis situations that they're in, is essentially investing in building peace. And I'll share a little bit of story around one of the projects that we're working on very recently. Uh, so we were, me along with my co-founder Kaushal, were interacting with people who were displaced by floods in India. Uh, and we realized something very interesting, right? We realized that while losing your home is devastating in and of itself, its implications go far beyond the roof over your head. It means that you typically lose access to your job, you don't have access to safe water or sanitation. And so this has a ripple effect on people's health because they're exposed to the elements, they don't have access to, sort of clean resources. It leads to increased incidences of diseases, particularly in India, such as cholera and diarrhea. It leads to a drop in instances of education. It leads to drop in instances of employment, and overall, fundamental lack of psychological safety. So it fundamentally touches everything. And so we're building Nostos, which is the first of its kind, completely collapsible, modular, lightweight shelter kit, where we've combined technology, data, and design innovation to really pioneer this idea of delivering the whole package, including living spaces, sanitation, energy access. So these can get transported as a flat pack and then assembled into a full-fledged home, just like Lego, by 4 people in less than a few hours. And so we hope that these really low-cost, solutions that we've built uh, can help can help all the people who consistently get displaced from their homes due to natural disasters, the effects of climate change, or as or are forced to flee as results of violent conflict. And these people are faced with realities that deny them a dignified life and fulfillment of their capabilities. And so our hope with sort of building Nostos is that we hope that these homes act as a mechanism to help restore personal security, dignity, and self sufficiency in times of crisis and displacement. And so that they act as these mechanisms to help displaced communities rebuild, and that way, sort of playing a fairly direct role contributing towards positive peace building across the board for displaced communities. And it's been an exciting journey for us so far. We're going to pilot our project in western parts of India, which are fairly flood prone. We'll be working with a community there where we hope to sort of provide over 16,000 nights of shelter through each Nostos homes. unit. And being low cost was very important for us. So we're doing this at, a price point of less than 20 cents per person night. And so it's very exciting for us as we sort of head towards that deployment.
That's fantastic. Incredible, Madhav. Thank you so much for sharing that. And congratulations for everything that you guys have built so far and also your future plans. I know Green the Gene has a lot of plans for the future to expand and continue doing amazing work. And I also love your sort of intersectional perspective that you have about peace and also very systematic perspective, right? It's not only about avoiding conflict or rebuilding communities after conflict. It's also about creating an environment of resiliency, self-sustenance, like you were saying, to make sure that people have access to those basic rights that then will provide safety for them and that will make the community feel secure, and so on. And I love the approach you guys have for that towards technology, using technology for good. We are in such a fast pace developing so many new technologies and different things now. And I think for us as social entrepreneurs, it's super important to be able to connect the dots and use those resources for the impacts that we want to see in our community. So that's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us. Great. And our final speaker is Jacksona Soto. Jacksona is a South Sudanese refugee living in Uganda, and he's the co-founder and executive director of Platform Africa. He also created the hashtag Peace Village, a digital literacy and hate speech mitigation program that runs community peace building, training, as well as conflict reconciliation projects aiming to strengthen the voice and support the actions of peace and youth-oriental civil society organizations in South Sudan and South Sudanese diaspora communities. Welcome, Jacksona, and thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us.
Awesome. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who shared their story. It was, a lot of dimensions to look at what peace is and how all of us are collectively working towards that. My story is a little different too, and I would like to begin with an inspiration that I got last week. We had a conversation with a lady who runs the Advocacy Academy, and she asked us a question: what makes us angry? And usually the point is that if you are angry about something, you are likely to change it. So if you are angry about poor access to water in your community, you are likely to use that anger as a recipe or a motivation to basically change that situation. And for me, I think that is where my whole work and active sort of comes from. So just to begin and to talk more about my work, I sort of like want to start a little bit to share my story about what motivated me to do the work that I do now today. So I am a twice over refugee. That means that I've been to a refugee camp like for a second time now. The first time my parents moved to the refugee camp, and I was given birth to in the refugee camp in 1996, because my parents fled a conflict in Sudan, a conflict which was basically marred in religious differences, language differences, and issues of resource sharing, which lasted for over 2 decades. So when my parents basically fled to the refugee camp, every one of them had the hope that they're gonna come back to their country in 2 or 3 months. However, peace has remained elusive. And as a little boy, I was told of stories of my parents having to move from one country to another. After being displaced in South Sudan, they moved to Congo. And after issues in Congo as well, my parents moved to Uganda. And within Uganda, they were actually also displaced many times because by then the Joseph Kony insurgency in northern Uganda was very active. So even refugees were being displaced within Uganda. But however, in 2005, January 9th, 2005, a peace agreement was signed between the southern part of the country and the northern part of the country called the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, or CPA. That peace agreement later led to the separation of the southern part, which is my country, from the north. And for a lot of people, also personally me, that was sort of a definitive moment. We felt that as a country, now we get the opportunity to define the vision for the country that we want to see. We also get the opportunity, the chance to rebuild and create a reparation around how do we, come back as a country. And it was a lot of celebration. But barely 2 years after the country was declared independent, another conflict, another wave of conflict happened, which forced a lot of people to the refugee camp. And I happened to be among the people that were displaced to the refugee camp. So when I arrived to the refugee camp, there's the usual process. You get registered and enrolled in the system, and then you get given a plot of land. When I came to the refugee camp the first time, I was basically born there. I had no idea. I heard stories about how my parents were displaced from place to place, but I've never really experienced that as a person. But when I came to the refugee camp, and we were all given pieces of bush basically to clear and call a home, that was the moment I realized how conflict can take away your future and everything that you know in just a snap of a second. Um, but and then when that happened, I realized that I needed to make a difference. And the difference is that I don't want the life that my parents went or lived to happen to anybody, where access to basic human necessities was basically a luxury. My parents lived a life that was almost, meaningless. They weren't able to go to school. They weren't able to send their kids to school. They weren't able to contribute to the communities that host them in the refugee camp. And basically, it felt like the dignity was stripped away from them. So when I came to the refugee camp, I noticed and saw all these enormous challenges that are facing people. A lot of young people that I spoke with when we came to the refugee camp were frustrated, and they felt that they're sort of, locked in a situation where basically their future is now a far-fetched reality. But then that was the moment we said we want to create a difference. We want to show the world that refugees are not just people who are displaced and escaping conflict, but they are also people who are humans. They have dreams, they have hopes, and they basically have the potential to become the next Albert Einstein or the next Elon Musk if they are given the opportunities and the right environment to nurture them become who they are and what they want to be. And so that was when we started the idea of initiating our organization, which is called Platform Africa. And the idea really in the beginning was just how do we create platforms where young people can, access programs that would help build the social cohesion. How can we build platforms where young people have access to quality education and skills development programs? How do we create platforms where communities can have access to um, conversations that would engage them in issues that affect them? And that was when we started the organization. So we started Platform Africa. Our key pillars when we were starting the initiative was how do we look at access to skills and skills development programs? How do we build, programs that help young people access education? And how do we build peace? And for us, one of the really core pillars that ties all this together is the idea of peace. I like this adage that says that you can help a homeless man with a bed if he doesn't have a home. And for me, peace is sort of the foundation or the basis of access to skills or all of the other things that we talk about. When we came to the refugee camp, we were able to witness very active issues of conflict that existed among the refugees. One of the issues was sort of pushed by the idea that so the conflict in South Sudan was based on a very ethnic landscape. And so a lot of people, even in the refugee camp, still carried along that history of division and felt that some communities weren't deserving living in the refugee camp with them when they are the one that started the war in the country. And there's also this element of how technology was being misused to inflame the conflict in South Sudan. People were using fake news on the internet. on social media, people were sharing, rumors that were unverified. And unfortunately, this information that young people get online tend to mostly shape their opinions on issues that are happening around their surroundings. And so you find that there's a lot of tension that is happening or happens in the refugee camp. When we noticed that, we said we wanted to, find ways to sort of bring young people together, and sort of tell them that we can all be different, but there's a way for us to realize, the advantage of our diversity. And so when we came to the refugee camp, the first project that we started working on was a project called Peace Village. It was a digital literacy and hate speech mitigation program, and sort of the approach of the program was three-pronged. We wanted to be able to, one, um, you know use training and campaigns as a means to reach young people and advocate for peace. Second, we wanted to create educational materials that can be, circulated in different languages, so that people who are young and old and basically uneducated or whatever are able to access these and understand that, there's, a life beyond conflict. But we also started engaging in very creative means on how, yeah, people can live together. And this is where we use music and art as a tool for basically, helping um, people come together and do cultural exchange programs. One of the things that we did as part of our approach using art was we brought people together in one huge event where all these different communities share music from their culture, they share poetry from their culture, they share food from their culture, and we made sure that the event sort of reflects the idea that there is, you know, there is meaning and advantages in diversity if we're only able to see it. But besides that, our programs were also focused on sort of helping create different mindsets. Uh, and for that to happen, we also felt that people need to be able to move over the conflict and the result of the conflict. A lot of people coming to Uganda moved on their foot, basically, over miles and bushes, and they have either experienced very unspeakable horrors, um, or lost their loved ones. And so even at the refugee camp, the idea that you have lost your home, your life coping mechanism has been crushed, and you are in the middle of nowhere, and basically told to call that home, was an idea that a lot of people could not really come to terms with easily. And so we started mental health programs for children and for adults. Our idea was, how do we equip people, community leaders, youth, with skills to be able to act as first aid, supporters to help people actually talk through their problems and heal from that. And I'm happy that up to date, we have a lot of groups that started from those trainings that are existing, supporting people in the different communities. Others have sort of gone into groups where young women contribute money together as, as a bank, and they use that sort of capital to be able to loan to themselves and help them grow businesses. Based on the idea that for you to basically heal from trauma, you need to sort of create a new reality. And I think financial independence is one of the ways to do that. Um, so we do a lot of also trainings with young people on how to use social media properly, and also really actively working on mitigating fake news and debunking rumors and misinformation that is likely to cause tension among the community. With that being said, I say that peace was basically the basis, but we also understand that for that to happen, people need to be able to get skills so that their dignity is earned back. Young people need to become self-reliant. For that to happen, you need a job, and so we're offering skills. I'm really happy and proud to say that by the support of our, collaborating partner in Germany, the Rock Agency, we have started a project where we are training young people on STEM skills for school going kids in the refugee camp. Because one of the gaps that we realized that in the refugee camp, the education that people get is either theoretical, or kids go to schools where the teachers are not trained. Uh, they have no resources to teach in the class, and basically the idea of hope is sort of like, a very little light that exists. But how do we, support that system and train people, giving them, hands-on skills that are practical that young people can relate with, and sort of use that as a basis to help support the education system in the camp. We are training young people on practical technical skills, on how to repair a mobile phone, how to repair a computer. We are also doing training to women on how they can make shop, because for us, we think that refugees have the potential and creativity to create that future that is beyond conflict. So our work really is just taking away the barriers along the way to that. And I think this is where our pillars and projects come in, helping young people access education, young people access skills, and also just the idea that we can live together and strengthening our social cohesion and rebuilding our social fabrics. I think that's one thing that is really important moving forward.
Thank you so much, Jacksana, for sharing your story. There's so much that I gained from hearing you speak. You are doing such incredible the multifaceted approaches you're taking to achieving your goals of creating peace. It's very impressive, and also, most importantly, how you turned your personal experience into positive peace actions. And there's no doubt that you are really a true peace builder. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And we also have a video that you've sent in from your Peace Village, which we would like to share with everybody. So yeah, let's play that.
Ronnie Rhythm spun the beat.
We just want to dedicate this song to everybody that lost their loved ones in the wars. And all we want to do right now is to create a peace village for everybody to live in. We want to change the way the people live and to defy hate now.
We only reap what we sow. We don't need to suffer anymore. All we need is love in our hearts. All we need is peace for all. We only reap what we sow. We don't need fightings anymore. All we need is love in our hearts. All we need is peace for all.
It's gonna be you and me to change this world into a better place. Let's learn to love and not discriminate. Let's learn to move along, get along. I can see more people falling victims to bullets and bombs. Some are forced to run away and leave their homes. Why does it have to be this way? Where do we gain from the wars and pain? Let's give peace a chance to take control, cause all it needs is all of us to play that role. Cause all we need is come together. Divided we fall, united we're strong.
We only reap what we sow. We don't need to suffer anymore. All we need is love in our hearts. All we need is peace for all. We only reap what we sow. We don't need fightings anymore. All we need is love in our hearts. All we need is peace for all.
What we gain from these wars and pain. What we gain when the nation is crying and we're losing hopes. What we gain, you my brother and my sister, we belong to each other. Love one another. If I hate now, no need for a trigger, let us hold our
We only reap what we sow. We don't need to suffer anymore. All we need is love in our hearts. All we need is peace for all. We only reap what we sow. We don't need fightings anymore. All we need is love in our hearts. All we need is peace for all.
a politician. Had to live and sleep at night with this corruption. And what the mission is to find peace. Why don't you practice what you preach? Generation is dying, the mothers are crying. All we doing, praying for the brighter day, for the brighter day.
And we don't wanna be refugees no more.
We only reap what we sow. We don't need to suffer anymore. All we need is love in our hearts. All we need is peace for all. We only reap what we sow. We don't need the fightings anymore. All we need is love in our hearts. All we need is peace for all.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Big shout out to the community in Jacksana's community. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I am personally so blown away by all these inspiring stories that we've heard today. I want to thank you all so much for sharing your time and your experiences and your wisdom. The diverse backgrounds that you all have really highlighted that peace is a universal issue, and we all have the power to contribute to building a more peaceful world. So thank you.
Absolutely. I agree with Kasha, and I would just add how much we were able to connect the dots of peace, both positive peace and negative peace, and how much both are important to ensure that we live in an equitable and a sustainable world. You know, we've heard from Avina about finance rights and access to finance as a way as well to sustain peace. We heard from Carolina and Might Have about the basic human rights that people need to be able to live in peace, like health, water, food, shelter, and so on. We also heard from Diego about the importance of diversity and biodiversity to contribute to peace. We learned from Kiko about education and access to the job market, which are very, very important pillars of positive peace as well. And of course, we heard about from Jacksana about post-conflict peace building and securing opportunities, access to rights. And like he said in his story, there's life beyond conflict, and that's what we want to hope for. Also, the message from the song that we heard today, peace for all is what we want. So just wanted to thank so much everyone for joining us, of course, our storytellers, and also the audience listening from all over the world. Please stay tuned on Youths and Youth Opportunities and other events. We would love to have you with us in the future. So thank you so much, everyone. We wish that everyone stays well and safe, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.